No more tinny sound, Alice.
Oh, you fixed it? What was it?
Come on, bro. It's this button here, and I don't even know what it does. It's a big volume button. If you turn it up, then it makes a tinny sound. You want to hear? Let's turn it up.
Yeah.
Check 1 2 check 1 2 check 1 2 check 1 2 check 1 2.
Oh yeah, now I'm tinny. I can
You hear?
totally hear it. Yep.
Tinny, 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 tinny. Now we untin. Now we untin.
D10.
All right, I'm going to start the day by telling you how I started the day. Alice took the kids down to church. I stayed behind and made sure the house was secure.
It's Saint Sava Day.
Saint Sava Day. She went down to church and then got this note from a neighbor that there was a missing 14-year-old in the town. It was a 14-year-old girl and on the spectrum or something, and said she'd been missing. And I thought, that's terrible. I mean, she walked out of the house. It's cold out. You know, something could happen. But you know, you hear these things. People go missing and it happens, etc. But then I was getting out of town to join Alice and the kids. Mm-hmm. And a bunch of roads were closed. And it became very real that like people were out looking, and there was a bunch of people like walking dogs or just walking around looking. This is near a big wooded area. This is the part of town where you don't want to be missing.
Right.
And I could tell the cars in front of me were going really slow looking around. And I was kind of looking around too. And it really hit me how freaking horrifying that would be as a parent.
Yeah.
Horrifying. If we were all here, then I would have said we should all just be looking around for this kid. It felt so like important, and I thought, man, I'm going to be at this place just having some kind of emotional thing. But then I saw as I'm driving, and it was hard to get out of town. As I'm driving down the street,
are we allowed to tell people that the ending of the story?
Well, yeah, I was gonna.
Okay.
I had that planned.
Okay,
Alice.
people are asking in the chat.
Yes. So as I'm driving down one of the streets here, a cop is coming the other way, and he's going about 2 miles per hour. He's just looking into the woods. It was like really eerie, really, really eerie. And you think about like, God knows what would happen. I can't imagine being in that house. Anyway, the child is safe. They found her. I guess she's fine. I don't know how she got out or went out and et cetera. But man, it is interesting when it's very localized like that, because you never see a police cruiser going 2 miles per hour as he's just scanning. And you know, these people and neighbors of these people were probably must have been like sprinting through the woods, calling her name and trying to like get her attention, et cetera. So we haven't quite had that. We've had many small minor disasters at this house. And it's amazing that this house, like the other day,
Anson being missing on
Peaks, not Peaks Island, Hermit Island.
Hermit Island, that was up there.
That was a bad one because he could go missing and then be in the water somewhere and not swim and drown. So that's a nightmare. Yeah, but we found it, or somebody else found him.
He just missed a turn and kept walking.
Exactly. But like we have all sorts of stuff going on, and it's like chaos, etc. Like yesterday, somehow the dog got out of the house with the door open, so the dog's just running around. So there's always something happening here, and this house is like we said, it's mostly nature. It's not really a house. It's a bunch of. It's almost like a movie set. If a movie set was made badly. Because that's what it is. It's downstairs.
In the 1700s, the construction standards were different. Like, I do feel sometimes that we're in, like, a fake house.
Well, yeah.
It's, like, not designed to keep up with today's standard of living.
No, and there's, like, you know, in one of the rooms that's really kind of cool, that's kind of the family room, as we call it. It's all exposed timber from back then, including, like, with bark on it. Like, not all just huge trunk, like, stuff that's barely been cut. And you're like, that is really rudimentary. That is amazing.
Well, they did better than I could do, so I'm not about to sit here and diss it.
I'm not dissing it. I'm just saying that also nobody who weighed as much as me existed back then. So I walk into this room, which is like, it's below us, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, for a while, Sally was like working out in her room and doing jumping jacks and stuff, which if you were down in the family room was like terrifying. Not because she's big, because she's not. But because anybody jumping on the upstairs floors in a 1700s house, if you're directly below them and an exposed wood ceiling, is terrifying. the woods like bending. It's scary.
Okay, so that brings me to today's first thing. Oh, but you know what? Let's give a shout out, a nod to the Serbian Orthodox Church.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, me and my friend Mike are there at the church. Mike, who you guys all know, Mike, who got me into trouble 2 weeks ago, and even last week, etc. I've been very badly behaved, and Mike is one of the reasons why. My old pal from the '90s, the guy who was there with Paul when Paul bought us drinks, and I had to put out to have that happen, etc. And so we bring Mike to the church today because we figure there's beautiful Serbian women, and it was packed full of beautiful Serbian women, and a lot of them were young and single, etc. But so we figured, we'll bring Mike back there, around there, maybe something will happen for him. And we brought him there, and it was fun.
Well, and as I pointed out, the last place you brought him is the Brook, which has fewer attractive women than the Serbian church does.
That is true. And so, but it really does get you thinking. Oh, that's right. I tried to take a selfie of me and him. We both looked way too fat, so we just deleted those. And then I handed Alice my phone to take a selfie, and she decided that meant that I wanted her to video record my son dancing along with her video recording, and I had just handed to her to do it, which makes no sense at all.
Sure. So, but it also makes no sense that as our kids are about to go on the stage and be in their dance performance, that you would hand me your phone to take a picture of you, because I thought that the thing that we were there to take a picture of is I'm literally holding up my phone ready to take a picture of them when they come out, and you hand me your phone. Why would my immediate thought be that I want to take a picture of you?
Why would I need your vantage point? Yeah, I'd like
I was in a better spot than you were.
No, you're 4'5" and you're 3 feet in front of me. It doesn't make any sense.
Why do I need a picture of you and Mike?
I need a picture of me and Mike.
We're performing.
I realize that. That's fine. That's the same thing with me handing you the water with the first night we were together. And
what I think that Alice would really want to do right now is turn away from her kids on the stage and take a picture of me.
People transact in seconds and get that over, then can swivel right back and do the thing. Anyway, the point is this. Is those Serbians, those are bringing our best.
Absolutely.
Those people are exactly what you need. Exactly. First of all, they're physically, the women are beautiful. The men are 7 feet tall.
Yes.
They're strong. They're not fat like me. They look good. They do stuff. They have careers. They're go-getters, they're self-starters. They understand implicitly the American dream, and almost to a person hit the ground running. They are rocking and rolling. And the tight religious group, and this place was packed today. It was like
the bishop was there.
Bishop was there, right? And the place was totally packed. Food is good. The drinks are good. It's like it is nice and chaotic where there's kids flying around and there's not enough room, and it's a perfect, exactly how it should be. So I think we should shout out the Serbian Orthodox Church, but then there's other churches too. But it was just that is a good event, and that core of people.
Julian Filler saying in the chat that Melania was speaking to the California fire victims in Serbian and Slovenian.
Really? Oh, how cool! Yeah, those are just a good bunch of people, much like the people at our inauguration, the Phil and Julie's inauguration party they put together last week. You're going to need people like that if ever it hits the fan in this country, because the people who are, panicking, blue-haired, and screaming into TikTok, the people who are in the Melrose community group saying, okay, guys, we need to all process this together. I know there's so many things happening so fast. This is what you need to do. I got this from the internet. Just prioritize on a few emergency things. Check on your neighbors. Freaking, who needs panickers? You never need panickers, ever. Right. And for their understanding to be, oh my, Donald Trump is getting rid of illegal aliens. Law-breaking people who broke the law, who cut in line, who could have gone to points of entry, who didn't, who just went over the fence or through the river, whatever.
Donald Trump turned off their app.
Right. Turned off their app, exactly. It's amazing. Oh, but he's really doing it. Yeah, because we're trying to have a country here. And the people who try to have a country have certain rules and guidelines. Your pretty Melrose Center and the pretty street, etc., and the law and order that happens there didn't just happen.
No, they think it does. They think the reason why Melrose is like that and Lawrence isn't is just because, you know, there was mean racism in Lawrence or something.
Right.
That deprived Lawrence of having Melrose Center happen there and the Melrose schools happen there.
Right. So,
Like, but it's not. The Democrat policies cause that type of blight.
yes.
Lawrence doesn't have to be that way.
Right. And so there is this feeling it's this need to believe, and I really think it's because of lack of religion, and I'm not a religious guy, but I don't dispel religion.
Mm-hmm.
I am watching it, looking around, and to me, most of the people that I look up to intellectually, etc., are religious. So I'm not, and most of the people that I look down at intellectually are people who think they're the smartest, greatest smartass in the world by saying there's no way that Noah had 2 of every animal on a boat. It's like, okay, we get it. You figured that out. Maybe it didn't, whatever. But
they were also, by the way, familiar with boats and lots of animals several thousand years ago.
Sure.
Like, they knew about that.
By the way, and also, when we have record floods now, we also blame it on something supernatural.
Right.
But man-made because
it's
of
the
malevolence.
styrofoam that you got your takeout and
exactly.
made
Most of the
that
people who
happen
look
by
like
magic.
me, exactly, for overindulging now, and people who look like you, who in the 80s used a lot of hairspray, the CFCs were.
Mm-hmm.
So it's because we were indulging in the niceties of democracy, we've now destroyed the world, caused the floods. Now you see.
Mm-hmm.
You see? So, like, when they come from this higher place of higher understanding and pretense that, like, we
Right.
know, as if, like, Jesus
Right. Their
really
whole
walked on
worldview
water.
is a moral fable.
Oh, totally.
Everything's like evil capitalism. See?
Well, totally. Which allows them to underachieve nobly, they feel, because the whole thing's set up. See, that's what it is. And they create fake narratives all the time that allow them to do whatever they want to. And it gives them total license. Yes, I can panic on Facebook right now because Trump literally sent the mob to the Capitol on January 6th and killed 20 cops right there and strung their bodies up like Mussolini. He literally, you see?
Wait, can we talk about Chris Christie saying that on This Week today when they were talking about pardon power? Everyone's talking about pardon power. Like, both Trump and Biden abuse their pardon power as though there's any equivalency
But that is
to pardoning.
precisely the meat of the show today, Alice. And I'll get the Christie audio while I'm playing this other audio. You're precisely right. And that's the meat of the
But
show.
everyone's like, look at all the presidents abusing their pardon power. As
right.
though, I mean, like,
So
I happen to personally think some of the January 6th people should have gotten in trouble. Maybe not that everybody should have been pardoned. That being said, there's no personal benefit to Trump to pardoning January 6th people.
So let me I want to play something for you. I scraped this Friday, and this is from the Dispatch podcast. Now there's been a lot of this too, and then we're going to play a JD Vance cut, and then I'm going to find that Christie cut as well. So Dispatch, as we know, are never Trumpers, and then there are some people there who are just good thinkers who aren't that bothered by it. They're not
Right.
that emotionally hurt. Like Steve Hayes and Jonah Goldberg, the guys who founded the Dispatch and who are the bosses there, they're emotionally hurt by January 6th. They continue
Right.
to be, and by Donald Trump to this day.
Mm-hmm.
To this day. Now, Sarah Isgur, who's, by the way, she's a type of woman. She's a very lovely looking woman,
Mm-hmm.
but when she smiles, she becomes like devastatingly beautiful. There is something for that, Alice. You have a little bit of that too, because you've got a nice snaggle smile, which is fantastic. There are some women who are lovely, and then when they smile, are just show-stopping. That's what Sarah Isgur is. So, but she's also a lawyer. She also worked for the Trump Justice Department. She's not a Trump person. She condemns him all the time. But they have a debate about which pardons were worse. So she tells the story of just one of the people Biden pardoned. Now, this is not the guy from Connecticut who shot the 8-year-old's mother in the head in front of the 8-year-old, then shot the 8-year-old in the head, killed both of them, who's now been pardoned, who's now a free man.
Mm-hmm.
This is a different guy that Sarah Isgur talks about. And this is a lesson in like where people are calibrated in their minds. Now, we talk about Hogg's got the fever. Sarah Isgur does not have the fever.
Right.
She's not a Trump person, but doesn't have the fever.
The person who I talked about who is being released in Fayetteville, North Carolina, his name is Genesis Lee Whitted Jr. He was sentenced to 35 years. That's 420 months in prison. He was the leader of the Bloods gang called Addicted to Money, or ATM. He and his gang members were linked to home invasion robberies, carjacking, shootings, financial fraud, obviously drug trafficking. One of the female victims, and to remind you, girlfriends of drug dealers were also frequently harmed during these invasions. On 2 occasions, Whitted and his accomplices poured boiling water on these female victims until they disclosed the locations of drugs and or currency. During one of these invasions, a taser was deployed on a woman's genital area. This man's being released this week back into his community.
Right. You know, there's a certain group of like men who create societies, like let's say the group of Serbs today or the group last week at the inauguration party, where really if you're a kind of monster who tases a woman, you know,
in that way,
right, that you go missing, it's over, bye-bye. We tried to take him for a citizen's arrest, and he's just, we don't know where he is now. There's a certain society, to make a society, where you have to have that. Joe Biden just let the dude go. You can go ahead. Go ahead.
Imagine being the female victim who had the guts to testify against these guys, this whole gang, and the whole gang went away. And now this guy's going to be back out on the street. Imagine what her life is like this week because of Joe Biden's decision to not actually look into whether these were nonviolent drug offenders. Like this guy smoked a joint and ended up getting 35 years in jail. No, look at what actually happened. And she's fearing for her life this week for good reason. And God help us if anything happens to her.
Okay. Pretty compelling stuff, right, Sarah Isgur. Steve Hayes joins the debate. And he's going to contend that the January 6ers are actually worse. Unbelievably.
Think about the January 6ers. You know, they didn't directly kill anybody, but you've got a defendant like Matthew Kroll who stole a police baton.
By the way, directly kill anybody, when he says
Did they indirectly?
When he says they didn't directly kill anybody, well, then this debate is over.
Right, because Biden released people who directly killed people.
Right. Not everybody was so fortunate to just get tased in the groin. Some people are actually killed.
Like Matthew Kroll, who stole a police baton from a cop and then beat numerous other cops with the baton. You have the guy who
I can't believe we're going to get into a debate about like whose violence
This
is
is
worse.
why the worst thing is worse. Is bad.
But Steve, that is a single incident. This guy dedicated his life to terrorizing a community over years.
Totally.
Not a single event. And he's going to go kill people. The witnesses who testified against him. I guess I'm just not worried about the January 6th defendants. They may commit other crimes, I will grant you. But I don't think they're going to January 6th again and go back to a life of January 6th thing the way that these guys
That's our fundamental disagreement. That's our fundamental disagreement. I think what Trump is saying here, I mean, look, this is somebody who from the podium on numerous occasions has advocated violence, right?
What?
This is what he was saying when a bunch of people in 2016, and they were beating the crap out of Trump people, including, I think, in Palo Alto, California, a bunch of like Antifa and like BLM thugs were showing up at Trump events and starting fights and beating the crap out of Trump people. And Trump would say, knock their heads, I'll pay for your lawyer fees. So yes, he was advocating for the people who were attacking them to be beat on. There's context to this.
He is now blessed what they've done. As I've said, he's repeatedly called them hostages. He was asked about this directly in his Oval Office session that night, about the Proud Boys specifically, and basically said they're patriotic Americans who love their country. They deserve pardons.
The freaking Proud Boys. Does anybody know? The Proud Boys stem from Opie and Anthony and Gavin McInnes going out and getting drunk and getting in fights a lot. They are not a terrorist organization. Yeah, there's all sorts of efforty.
Some of them may be arrested again.
Well, sure. But it's a totally different thing.
Right.
But these for like thinking conservatives to say Proud Boys, the Proud Boys were there. Stand up and stand
Compared
by.
to,
He said
like-
stand by. The Proud Boys are standing by now.
Compared to career criminals who murder people and deal drugs as a career choice and stuff. Like it's nuts to compare the two.
I mean, if that's how you've operated, and look, you don't have to read, all 800 or plus pages of the January 6th committee report to understand why they did what they did in an attempt to steal an election. They are going to do this again. They're going to do it again and again and again, and it's not going to be about stealing an election. It's going to be about anything they want to do.
By the way, they're going to do this again. I think that 2020 was a special circumstance. It was a special time after special BLM stuff was let happen, after special COVID lies happened, after Trump's special first term was totally sabotaged by the same people who were processing this election. After the special media refused to cover the special Hunter Biden laptop. I mean...
and actually, it's fascinating because The Atlantic this week had a piece about the Hunter Biden laptop. And it's so fascinating that, now that it's all done and they've punished the January 6th people and they've done all this, now they can admit that there was there.
Right.
Now The Atlantic has a piece out this week that's called... Turns out signing the Hunter Biden letter was a bad idea.
Wow.
Bold take in 2025. Why so many titans of intelligence were willing to risk their hard-won credibility is deeply mysterious, writes Graham Wood in The Atlantic. Is it, though, mysterious?
Well, here's another thing, is that election, 2020 election, was a weird night. It was a weird night. It really was. And for you to tell me that all this footage of weird ballot stuff happening was absolutely normal, for you to tell me that's absolutely normal, F you, because that right there tells me you're up to something.
Well, right.
And for you to then tell me that, by the way, it was the most secure elections we've ever had, F you.
Well, and even without getting into the election night counting stuff, right? The Hunter Biden laptop story alone has always been enough to me to say that that's shenanigans because this is what The Atlantic writes now in 2025. Why these titans of intelligence were willing to risk their hard-won credibility on the possibility that Hunter Biden might not be a slimeball is deeply mysterious. Even considering their caveats, somehow they signed and published their letter without due diligence and without the slightest consideration that Hunter was in fact prone to shady behavior. No doubt they felt the laptop story was urgent because it could affect the election in a few.
Fuck. Jesus Christ. Go ahead.
No doubt they felt the laptop was urgent because it could affect the election in a few weeks, but their job was to seek facts and judge them with restraint. In this case, minimal fact-checking would entail asking the Bidens if the sordid laptop was real, and restraint would entail not venturing wild accusations. The letter does not suggest that the authors asked the Bidens, although they certainly could have, since according to a 2023 House Intelligence report, that the letter originated with a call to them from Anthony Blinken, a then Biden campaign official and later Secretary of State.
Of course.
Did the Biden team lie about the laptop or claim Hunter had no memory of it, or did the authors never even bother to inquire if it belonged to Hunter? Bold questions once again. 2025. It took somebody in The Atlantic 5 years to say, "Gee, wonder what happened with that. That was weird." Or did the authors never even bother to inquire if it belonged to Hunter? In either case, the letter exhibited extremely shoddy analytic craftsmanship. Some signers of the letter had access to classified briefings and could have asked their old colleagues in the intelligence community whether the laptop was a Russian hoax. In 2023...
Anson, you're going to have to let him back in, too.
And I mean, they go on. They're like, well, yeah, the laptop is real. Like, it's really Hunter Biden's. Duh. And they all touted this. Like, now the Atlantic can safely ask these questions, but they all touted this as, like, proof at the time that this was all, like, a crazy Russian misinformation thing. You know, and people reported that. Like, it was, laptop hoax. And, like, all these intelligence officials are saying that this hoax thing, blah, 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 blah. They're just trying to get a repeat of the Hillary Clinton Comey butter emails, blah, 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 blah. Like, we can't help it if all your candidates happen to do shady things on laptops.
Right.
Like, try to find better people or something. I don't know what to tell you.
Right. And, like, everybody saw this.
Trish says in the chat, you can almost hear the Atlantic writer's brain ding with awareness.
Totally.
Wow, it's weird. They all signed this letter. What could be the explanation? Why didn't they even try and find out if it was real?
Have you guys heard about this laptop?
Crazy stuff.
There might be something. But that's part of the thing that I told you about that Channel 7, program director or whatever at the time, when I said the dog face pony soldier thing. I said, wow, did you hear what that Biden called somebody a dog face pony soldier? And he said, yeah, no, it's a normal thing. He's always done it. It's a John Wayne thing. It's nothing. Oh, okay. I see. The reason why the Atlantic writers and that guy and a whole bunch of other people never knew about this stuff is because they were on pure defense for their candidate. Mm-hmm. And that was it. They were working on behalf of the administration. They were not going to analyze a piece of news that was damaging to Joe Biden.
Well, and that's what's crazy is that, like, that's why the right never seems to get it, and the left is so, like, unified with this stuff. Will Stansel tweeted today, the important thing you need to realize if you're a Democrat is that, Trump is trying to change a bunch of fundamental rules about how America works. He goes on to say, like, that that the job of Democrats for the next 4 years is to try to make sure that they say everything is bad in America and say everything is going wrong for the next 4 years. Make sure people never hear a positive thing about how America is going.
Wow, is that a new strategy?
Yeah, no, but I mean, that's like that. They're open about it. That's what they do.
Right.
And so they're just blanket doing that. Trump's grabbing 11-year-olds out of elementary schools and deporting them because they're cruel and evil, even though they can't obviously find an example of that happening.
Martha Raddatz had Tom Homan on, and she says, "You're going to do more. You had 500 deportations. You're going to do that every day." He's like, "Yeah, I'm going to do it every day." Of course, it's every day.
What do you think the Department of Homeland Security is supposed to be for?
Yeah.
Not that we even need the Department of Homeland Security. It was only invented after 9/11.
But history starts now too. They're taking 500 away. It's like,
we were trying to let them all in.
No. But the thing is, like, did you ever report on them coming in? Did you ever notice that they were coming in?
Well, no. In this sense of shock that, like, undocumented people, you would deport them? Like, well, yeah, they broke the law to be here. Why does this shock you?
Right, and it's the whole thing, like Greg Abbott flying them to Martha's Vineyard is cruel. It's cruel. That is so cruel. Keep them in Texas, in camps. Here's the rest of the Steve Hayes thing.
Again, they're going to do it again and again and again, and it's not going to be about stealing an election. It's going to be about anything they want to do.
I just don't think there's a lot of witnesses sitting home wondering when someone's going to come kill them this week based on the Trump pardons, like there are hundreds from
What
the
about
Biden
the
pardons.
young man? What about the young man who turned in his father? What about the DC cops who?
The young man who turned in his father has some domestic fallout coming, I think, regardless.
But I don't think his father's going to murder him.
No. But the young man who turned in his father, he knows he's a spoiled piece of crap. The young man who turned in... So wait a second. So you got to keep his father in jail forever.
Right.
Because or else he's going to come home and see... His father knows his son's a little pussy piece of crap, okay? She's the young man who turned in his... Really, Steve? Really, Steve?
This weekend got restraining orders against some of these January 6 attackers. They certainly are afraid.
Well, I'll tell you, a restraining order is sure not going to help this woman.
But like, how weak is that? There's a bunch of people, the cops got restraining orders. Well, they're obviously trying to build a news hit. Obviously.
Well, yeah, and getting a restraining order doesn't prove that somebody's violent either.
No, and it's
Unlike
just,
somebody being a violent criminal, which does prove that they're violent.
it's amazing.
But they grant everybody restraining orders. That's how they work.
But it's just they needed something. They needed January 6th. They needed something to finally say, because for 4 years, Steve and Jonah were put through absolute just hell, not being the big men on campus anymore.
Right.
Having done all the intellectual legwork of knowing who all these fathers of modern conservatism
But, like,
were,
does the left have any-
and then they, for 4 years, they were waiting to say see, and then they finally got a mob thing in Capitol Hill. Now they're like, see, it's the biggest. Now you see how you should have loved me like you used to 5 years ago, forever. How you used to come to us. You know, we used to be the heads of the intellectual pillars of conservatism.
Mm-hmm.
We were somebody, and you see, you had the stupid love affair with this a-hole. Now you see, it's bigger than 9/11. Now you see.
But does the left have any equivalent to like Jonas and Steve Hayes? I mean, and I kind of like them, but I'm just wondering, like, is there anybody on the left who, I guess, like a Joe Manchin or a Kristen Sinema, maybe, but like
Or
commentary?
the guy on the 5, the black guy on the 5, the lawyer who used to be like a Tennessee politician.
I don't know.
You know him, Harold Washington.
I don't know him.
Who's
I don't really watch
Harold
the 5
Washington?
anymore.
There are just some people, but it's not a matter of. It's just a matter of not being affected by hysteria.
Right.
You're not asking, but like people can be still progressives.
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes you get Cory Booker will say something that's like not crazy. Sometimes you get even Ro Khanna will sometimes
Mm-hmm.
say something that's not crazy. Obviously, Fetterman sometimes says stuff that's not crazy.
Yeah.
But like, are there the analysts? It's tough to find them. It's tough to find them. I mean, if Fox is cutting them a check, they seem to temper their hysterics a little bit. But other than that, it's tough to find them. So we'll play the Vance part of this now, which is Vance going over.
But can I just say, too, because obviously, like, the violent criminals and stuff that Biden pardoned under the nonviolent drug offenders BS, which, like, I've literally never heard of a case where actually somebody's just purely a nonviolent drug offender and is in jail for that. Like, nobody's ever given me a anecdotal example of that happening, where somebody, like, gets caught with, like, a weed gummy and goes to jail. Right. Like, it just doesn't happen. But anyway, but forget that. Biden also pardoned his own family members for corruption involving him, for himself selling the influence of the vice presidency and presumably the presidency also.
Yeah, there's new reporting on that, like, too, showing that Hunter took the Romanian money and said all the reporting is now allowed. It's all allowed.
Right. But that, to me, is more like, I think the nonviolent drug offender pardons are bad, but they're clearly within the purview of the pardon power. Like, I wouldn't call that an abuse of the pardon power. I would call it a terrible, destructive use of the pardon power. But clearly, like, that's what the pardon power is for, is to pardon criminals at the discretion of the president. What it's not for is for the president to personally enrich himself and his family with impunity.
Right.
Which Trump, for all the accusations of corruption and this and that and Trump hotels and Trump businesses and international deals and all this stuff and all these claims that, like, Ivanka has enriched herself over all this stuff, right? He hasn't had to pardon his own family. It's not a thing that's had to happen.
Right.
He hasn't done it. They all claimed it was going to happen and it would be the worst thing ever if he'd done it. Like, to me, that's clearly an abuse. And there should not be, just like if there was like a quid pro quo where somebody like paid the president to pardon them or something, right? Like, that would be clearly wrong. But if the president is personally benefiting, which obviously you are, if it's your kid and your brother and your sister with whom you have pretty fluid finances, clearly. People buying each other's stuff. I mean, and that happens in families. People buy each other's stuff. People support each other. Like, people help each other out financially. Like, when you're personally enriching yourself by using the pardon power for getting yourself off the hook for things that you did to sell government influence to benefit you and your family, like that to me is a total abuse of the pardon power in a ridiculous way. I mean, and it's not written into the Constitution that it's illegal. Like the pardon power is a very, very absolute power. But
also,
I think there's a lot of talk about, should it be as powerful a tool as it is in the president's toolkit?
Had the investigative horsepower of the legacy media ever been truthfully trained?
Mark Sardella says Harold Ford Jr., not Harold Washington.
Yeah, that's right. Had the investigative horsepower of the legacy media ever been trained properly on the Biden administration, on Bob Bellucci, on Hunter Biden and Jim Biden, then they would have a much bigger than Nixon Watergate scandal they could have lived off. They didn't want to do it. That's not their charter. Their charter is not to go out and sniff organically for news. Their charter is to get their guy and protect their guy. And that's why they just use their legacy reputations. Guys who, like, from where Edward R. Murrow was considered a reputable person, right now they just use it to say that what Trump is saying is disinformation, misinformation, and lies, which is not at all ever what a journalistic organization is supposed to be doing, spending B blocks on breaking down a Trump presser, saying this is a lie, that's 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 a lie. Like, that's not your job, is not to blot out. It's almost like redact some stuff Trump says because you're bothered that it got to the people. It's like the idea is that,
especially when a lot of the stuff you guys say is lies, turns out to not be lies,
and that you've never once used the term lie in regards to Joe Biden. For 50 years, and especially the last 4, you never said he lied about anything.
Well, and I was saying that too when we were doing the Sunday shows, and Tom Homan is right on there answering questions from antagonistic journalists who are mad at him for what he's doing, and he's defending his positions to them out loud. Like, does anybody have like a shock to the system from this level of transparency from the Trump administration? And I know Axios just put out a story about how much like tighter this Trump administration is than the last one, that they've really like locked down the leaks and Trump's like personal leaks to people, like texting people random stuff and whatever, that like Susie Wiles and these people have Trump much more like controlled than the last time. But the level of access, the number of press conferences, the number of interviews, I mean, even just that thing he did like the first night with the presidential, the executive orders, like this stuff is, these people are freaking out about Trump, and they have access to the whole administration to come and answer questions from them and talk to them about what they're doing and why and their opinions on it and what they plan to do. And they didn't ask questions about Biden being hidden from the public for 4 years. It's so outrageous.
Oh, and one more thing too, Alice. About Steve Hayes said it's going to happen again about the insurrection, about the Proud Boys. It's going to happen again. It's going to happen again. No, it actually happened at all because you let it happen during the summer of 2020. The template was shown. Oh, I see. We break down doors and take over buildings.
Well, yeah, and that had been going on for a while before that. Remember, they did that to Scott Walker in Wisconsin, too, like the state house takeovers and all these things. Remember when they were confirming Kavanaugh and they all like hung around in the halls of Congress and shrieked at senators and stuff. I mean, like,
Alice,
screaming at Jeff Flake in the
autonomous
elevators.
Zones in cities, Chaz and Chop.
Yeah, I mean,
you've shown people you're allowed to just do it with warlords. Except everybody else, by the way, had guns.
Right, but I mean, even if you're going to say like protesting the government type of stuff, they still do these state house takeovers. The only reason the Capitol was even closed to the extent that it was because of COVID, right? And I just like the whole thing, and I hated January 6th because I'm like firmly in the anti-riot law and order camp, but I like the way they act about it is so outrageous and insane when you compare it to their behavior constantly.
Allison, okay. So we have to do the chat.
Okay, yeah.
So we'll see the AOC stuff. And this is, maybe we'll hit it for everybody else tomorrow, but this is, I am seeing the future right now, and she is the only light the Democrats have. She is the only thing. I don't even know if you know what I'm going to play, but she is the only thing they have. And she is much like Trump is the Republican Party. She may be the Democratic Party. All right, ready for the chat?
Mm-hmm. I was born ready. What do you want me to say? It's been a long day.
Mayor Wu, Governor Healy, and the rest of the Democratic Party in Massachusetts are all performative bit characters. When
Correct.
President Trump was reelected, they went to the media and they put on this whole big performance
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
that they were going to stop ICE, that ICE wasn't allowed into the state of Massachusetts. But where was Healy? Where was Wu when ICE was in East Boston, when they were in Chelsea, when they were removing illegals, arresting MS-13 members?
Right.
They weren't around because deep down, they don't have an issue with Tom Homan. They don't have an issue with Trump.
Of course
They're
not.
full of shit. This is all a performative-based act. It's a bit that they're performing to the media.
I don't know if it was you, Alice, or somebody who called my show said that, like, now you've got adults in charge doing the mean adult things by law and ordering things, etc., and that now allows these people in second floor of community buildings in Melrose and the sixth floor of Brooklyn. What do you call
Lofts?
that? Yeah, but what do you call it when your rent is capped?
Rent control?
Yes, rent control apartments to have Friday night meetings to do all your crazy stuff, but do it all. And like that.
And LARP that you're like resisting Nazis or
Exactly.
something.
because you don't have to worry about being brained when you walk outside of your apartment because the
What's that? Almost.
So because the adults are doing things you can now make pretend. What?
Like probably 20 minutes?
Okay.
Because they're covering their own asses. They want to be reelected, so they're going to put on this charade in the media so that the left-wing lunatics who live in our cities and towns will reelect them. I mean, it's such a bit.
I think that's totally true, Steve. Although I do think that
I think even a lot of the voters are LARPing.
I do think that the wind is not in their sails anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a fringe.
It's
The
much
people
more
in the
half-hearted
Melrose
than it
Facebook
was
group-
in 2016.
The people putting up lists of like things to do if you see ICE agents, those people, and they're by the way, they're also like very all comfortable, well off, and don't really have to worry about anything.
It's such a fraudulent act that these two are putting on, along with all the other Democratic leaders. So, maybe it's time now to stop the bit, stop the act. People can see through it. Embrace Tom Homan, embrace President Trump, because they're making America safe again, and they're making America great again.
Here we go, Steve from Gloucester.
They also don't actually, these like moms in Melrose and stuff, know any illegal immigrants except like their landscapers, which is why all their things. And there was a Facebook post, like a Melrose mom that I know who posted on Facebook, like, so once Trump deports all the illegals, are you going to go stand outside Home Depot and work in construction? Are you going to come clean my toilet? Who's going to do all this? It's not going to be you. Like,
we have, like the Trump said, we have brown people jobs, They have to do them. These are the same
really
people. These are the
insane.
same people, by the way. These are the same people who talk about, who complain to like the police on Facebook about them weed whacking too early in the morning.
Right.
Next door, my baby is trying to sleep. Can't you start later?
Heaven forbid the illegal immigrants try and get some work done before the sun is beating down on them.
They're used to it.
Okay, a couple of things.
Yep.
Tom, did you play the closing theme song to Coast at the very beginning of the live stream on Rumble the other day?
Mhm.
Yesterday.
Did I do that?
Yeah, you did.
Was the live stream?
Yeah.
Oh, was it?
You played the Coast to Coast music. Yeah.
Oh, okay. But not for the show. I played the show
No.
intro.
Yeah. But just on the live stream as we were setting up. Yeah.
I do that because during my radio show, some calls just get unanswered and unscreened. For some reason, and so I pretend they're on the wild card line. So I grab a Coast to Coast music and say, "You're next," because I don't have a person's name. So that is why I do that. It's a great song, isn't it?
I thought I heard it. Thought I heard you play that music. was hilarious. A sure sign that the Obamas are getting divorced is that Netflix is raising its prices again. Again. I know. Also,
That's
Gary
funny.
Sinise was not an American Beauty, Tom.
He wasn't? Yes, he was. Yes, he was. He was the next door neighbor, the psycho.
Please do some checking.
No,
My
yes, he was.
previous mention
That
about
is wrong. Wrong.
Is he? I don't know.
Gary Sinise was the next door neighbor psycho.
I don't see him listed here.
Gary Sinise, American. Who's the psycho next door?
Chris Cooper?
Oh, yeah,
Is
it's
that
Chris
who you
Cooper.
mean?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. He tried out for the part, Sinise did. And it was just edged out.
Just don't say anything about any movies anymore.
Damn it.
the Chinese and us selling them energy is because they love coal. They love burning coal. And we have coal and we ship it to them. And they own a lot of our debt. I think Trump needs to utilize that. Also, Burma is now called Myanmar.
Oh, really?
I believe that Yugoslavia is now no longer a country.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. We saw a bunch of former Yugoslavians
with a bunch
today.
of people who lived there, yes.
Remember, by the way, Dr. Cheswick, are you from Massachusetts? Do you remember the band Mission of Burma? Do you, Alice?
No. Things change names, and if the AP can't keep up, that's on them. Minute 10.
Here. By the way, Dr. Cheswick, also, like, when I grew up, Manchester, Mass was Manchester, Mass. There was no by the sea happening. So people F around with names all the time. Allison, get ready. You ready?
I'm ready.
Is the dog barking again?
Thank you so much for listening. If you're on the Patreon, stay there because we're going to talk a little bit more about some stuff on the other side. Tom's going to play some AOC, which always makes me happy. I do want to talk more about the people who can't
Is it
get
possible
over
the dog
that
is
they're
barking
help-
because the dog was never let in? Anson!
She
did you
sounded inside.
Did you let the
to me.
dog in? Can you go let the dog in? She's barking from somewhere around the house.
So stay there for that. You don't have to move. We'll continue live streaming. If you want to join the Patreon, it's patreon.com/burnbarrel. Some extra content each week, live streams every day, stuff like that. Otherwise, burnbarrelpodcast.com.